Hello, it's Martin from Wisely Automotive, and we've already featured the BMW i4 on the channel once, but back then it was the M50 version, which includes dual motors for all-wheel drive and maximum performance. However, admittedly, that car was quite expensive. That's what we concluded the video with, that it was not worth it to everyone to upgrade from something like a Tesla Model 3 or a Polestar 2, which are these cars' direct rivals. Whereas today we have the eDrive 40 version here, which means the same big battery as the M50, but only a single motor powering the rear wheels, which translate to cheaper insurance, even better efficiency and longer range. And keep in mind, I was already quite impressed with the M50 despite that having the extra motor, and lastly, lower upfront cost. And this car will actually represent value for money very nicely. Let me quickly show you around it. As you can see by the less aggressive front bumper, it is the sport trim level. In fact, with the previous one, quite a few people said that the bumper and the styling was a bit too aggressive and they didn't want to stand out so much. So this is definitely a little bit more understated, and it's one of the ways we will manage to retail it for less than £29,000. So definitely keep an eye on our Auto Trader page if you want to get your hands on a budget i4 with no category markings, no dodgy history and the biggest battery pack. Please ignore all the dirt, the mud and some of the imperfections in the paintwork. All of that will be addressed before it goes up for sale. But despite it being the base model, it is still quite well equipped. So for example, we do have an electric tailgate, these curved panoramic dual screens with a built-in navigation system, and I've already paired it to my BMW account and into my app. That was all very straightforward. You just scan a QR code and it adds it into the app, even easier than with the i3. And despite it being a touchscreen, we also get the eDrive jog wheel for easier operation while driving. I've already shown you the rear seat space in the previous video, so I will not repeat myself here. But even with the base model, you get 3-zone climate control with buttons for controls right here in the back. And all of that is powered by a standard fit heat pump. I quite like this upholstery situation with the half leatherette and half this kind of cloth technical material. Also LED ambient light strip in the back as well. And it seems to have worn extremely well. There's no signs of damage or wear and tear on the side bolsters, on the leatherette, nor on the cloth bits. This is all just a little bit of surface dirt which will get wet fact and it will look brand new again. But that's enough talking. We asked you on social media what you want to know about it, and you have come in with some questions and statements, but we will get to those later. First one was about the memory seats. Well, I can't quite show you that on this example because all of the adjustment is fully manual, but even on cars with memory seats, you only get the memory on the driver's side, so it would be located in this panel, and there is a blank cutout on the passenger side. That is entirely normal. I'm afraid BMW and most of these modern car manufacturers, they really want you to log in with their IDs into the infotainment system, because that way the car doesn't only remember your seating position, but it also gets tied to the position of your wing mirrors and any preferences within the system. And all of this syncs to the cloud and travels with you as you change vehicles. So in my case here, the seat couldn't adjust itself, but the mirrors did, and the home screen seems completely unchanged from what it was when I drove the i4 M50. But now let's really start driving, otherwise I will never make it back into the office. Start, stop. Ooh, do we have some of these electric sport sounds? Well, we will test it out, because the next question which came in was about the motors, the drivetrain, the battery. And I have to agree, this being a sedan, even though it's not a sedan, it's a hatchback, but you know what I mean, a sedan or a GT cruiser type of thing shape, it should handle better than many of these modern day SUV EVs. Coincidentally, I happen to be on some nice twisty roads in the area, so we will get to test it out. Firstly, the smoothness of the i4 is just astonishing. This being a different setup to the M50 has air suspension on the rear axle and adaptive dampers all around. This features passive dampers and steel springs all around, but the weight still seems to be very nicely controlled, and there is no compromise on comfort. The air suspension on the rear axle of the M50 is there to help with leveling in corners, not necessarily for comfort. So now out of the village, 30 to 50, let's punch it. There's definitely quite a bit of power available on tap, and it was still in comfort mode, so let me go into sport. And let's set the regen into B mode, so it feels like we are engine braking. All of these bends are quite sweeping and smooth, so it's not like I'm going crazy here. I just really want to get a feel for the car, but it's beautiful. And even over these imperfections and road undulations, look how well it's tracking. The car is so legible. You don't have to adjust your steering input as you are going through the curve. This non-M Sport steering wheel counterintuitively feels a little bit more sporty because it has a thinner, less padded rim, so you can actually feel stuff through it rather than the thick BMW steering wheels. Let's see, steeper bend here. And now we've got 20 miles per hour. Oh, and the brakes felt quite nice as well. Surprise, surprise, BMW knows how to build a car which drives well. Who would have thought? And my seat can go even lower than that. Now it really feels like I'm sitting on the floor. There's a lorry ahead of us, but nobody behind us. So let's do a little launch from here. No brake boosting, nothing crazy, just plant the accelerator pedal. Obviously it's nothing crazy like the M50, but still respectable and quicker than the iX3. That brings me on to the other question we got, which was specifically about reviewing the iX3. We actually sold quite a few, but they always sold quite quickly, so we never had the opportunity to properly review one. And while you may think that this i4 shares the same underpinnings with the iX3, just a different body shell on top, that's not quite the case. Yes, BMW labels both of them as featuring the 5th generation of the eDrive system, but eDrive is a very broad marketing term for all things electric in the world of BMW. To understand the jargon, we need to look into the history a little bit. The i3 is built on the 3rd generation of the eDrive, and that includes the motor, the battery. According to the marketing department, the latest 120 amp hour i3 got a 4th gen eDrive, but that's purely because the battery density got bumped up, whereas most of the 4th gen eDrive cars were actually plug-in hybrids like the X3, the X5 and so on, the outgoing ones. The 5th gen system launched with the iX3, and it is also present on the i4, but the battery is physically a different shape. BMW was already proud with the X3 how slim they managed to get the battery pack, but here it's even slimmer to allow that low and sporty seating position and lower center of gravity. I think the center of gravity is 5 centimeters lower than in a petrol-powered 3 Series or 4 Series, which is quite impressive. And that's thanks to the cell height only being 110 millimeters, so it's a very flat battery pack. And yeah, it's a different cell than what you get in the iX3. Likewise, the electric motor is tuned for a little bit more power, which translates to 0 to 60 in the 5-second region. So unless you are coming from something like the Model 3 Performance or a BMW M3, M4, I don't think you will be wishing for more power, and even if you have people and some luggage on board, merging onto the motorways will be a doddle. I'm approaching the M40 junction, but before I jump onto the motorway towards London, given I'm in Banbury, I want to show you the progress on the flagship Instavolt Hub. And here we are, look how impressive it is. We have got the original charging units from ChargePoint on the left, more charging units on the right, and a whole new row of chargers. I believe these are manufactured by BYD, all of them supporting contactless payment, CCS and CHAdeMO, so even if you have an older Japanese EV, you are covered. And yeah, very user-friendly. Where are the queues, please? I don't see any problems. But I still have about 63% in the battery, which should translate to 163 miles of range. That's really not bad. So let me set up the sat-nav and start heading back into the office. Navigate to SE162DB.
I have found multiple results for SE16 2DB. Which one should I select?
Number 1. Yes, Raymouth Road is correct, and before I jump onto the M40, let me behave myself. I will switch into Eco Pro mode. So now that I'm on the motorway, trip meter reset, and I will just use the cruise control to do the driving. However, this is a little bit deceptive because based on the buttons, it looks like the car features adaptive cruise control. There's also a radar in the front grille and obviously forward-facing camera for the mandatory safety features like lane departure warning and so on. But if I try to use these distance buttons, it says function acquirable, and you can buy it through the My BMW app, but it doesn't come with the car as standard. And now there are two schools of thought. Is this right or not right? When you're buying on the used market, it's actually a huge benefit, because obviously the previous owner didn't need to specify it, but you still have the option to unlock it later on. However, I can't help but feel that BMW was a little bit stingy, especially on a car of this class with this seemingly fantastic range. So far 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. You would expect adaptive cruise control for longer trips. Likewise, do you want your automatic high beam? You have to pay extra for that as well. I will try to check in the My BMW portal, but I believe the pricing is actually quite reasonable and you have it unlocked forever. And on the topic of these online payments, BMW recently got under a lot of fire for even requiring a subscription for heated seats, but I'm glad to report that's not the case in this i4. So now I'm in fully automatic climate control, but if I want to, I can show you that yes, you can force your heated seats on without having to pay extra. How generous of the Germans. So now the only thing left to do is for me to sit here, relax, enjoy the drive, enjoy the fantastic refinement of the i4. This is where it truly is best in class, and especially on these smaller 18-inch wheels, it just glides along. And I will catch up with you closer to London so we can assess the efficiency, but so far it's quite promising, hovering between 3 and 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour depending on the topography, but I'm sure that will stabilize as we drive along. It's 3 p.m. and the ETA to Bermondsey is 4:45. So over an hour and a half to do just over 50 miles. Welcome to London. But if you want to buy from us, we do offer driven delivery, so you don't have to endure any of this. And we are in a traffic jam. Red on the map, lots of brake lights ahead, so let's assess the efficiency situation. Now is the moment of truth. So from the home screen, 3.8 miles per kilowatt hour. That's pretty impressive, I would say. Over 77 miles and with a very steady average speed. As always, a disclaimer, don't take this as a 100% accurate range test. For that, I would have needed to drive a loop style route where you can cancel out some of the effects of the elevation and the wind speed, for example. But the weather has been pretty good today, at least considering it's November, 12 degrees Celsius outside, not much wind, and perfectly dry roads with very few clouds in the sky. Somebody has broken down, and shock horror, it's not an electric vehicle. And actually, now that I'm passing South Mims services, I think they upgraded some of the chargers, so let's see whether I can view details of those. Oh yes, there are now the new Apple Green units in addition to GridServe. This was much needed because South Mims is a very key service station on the M25. So for example, a lot of taxi drivers use it to top up between jobs. Now that I'm approaching London, it's time to consider the practical bits. One of you asked about the servicing interval on the i4 and whether it's the same as on the i3, where it's once every 2 years regardless of mileage. And I'm happy to report that is indeed the case. This being a 2022 car, it has already had one service, and just like with the i3, it includes the brake fluid flush, the visual check of the vehicle and a change of the cabin air filter. And if I go back out, you will see that the brake fluid is now due in September 2026, and so is the vehicle check. So thumbs up to BMW for keeping it reasonable, because I'm sure some of the other manufacturers are artificially shortening the intervals for their EVs just to make up for the otherwise lost revenue compared to the ICE counterparts. And on top of that, if you don't want to pay main dealer prices, we now service i4s, iXs, iX3s as well, so definitely get in touch if you want to book yours in.
Yeah, I think I follow you, you know?
Do you? Lovely.
Yeah, man. How you doing? Are you doing a review now?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
No worries, that was very sweet. Definitely, if you follow us and you spot us on the road, feel free to say hi. We always appreciate, meeting fans in the real world. But yeah, now I just have to battle through the last bits. I love coming into London this way, especially when the sun is setting. You can see Canary Wharf in East London right ahead of you. Looks absolutely stunning, and I know that I'm very close to home because I only have 6 miles left to go. And I think that's about it. I hope I covered all the things you wanted to know. So let's conclude here from the Rotherhithe Tunnel. The i4 is a very nice car. With the eDrive 40 it makes more sense than ever, and it basically removes the biggest drawbacks of the M50, but you're not really giving up that much overall in day-to-day use. So firstly, the price is obviously addressed. You save yourself quite a bit of money, and it's still sporty enough, dynamic enough, and the range improves even further. You can see for yourself that the efficiency has settled at 4.2 miles per kilowatt hour. That is really impressive. The fact that we are doing over 4 with the heating running and most of the journey done at 70 miles per hour, this is where electric cars should be in 2024. And that's me arriving to Weymouth Road. And throughout this video I kept saying office, but that's in fact our old office, because in case you're not aware, we are moving. So to catch up on how that's going, make sure to check out our Moving Wisely playlist. And if you want to see more EV content, mostly about BMW i products, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Thank you again for watching, and see you in the next one.